Hello and welcome to another edition of Sri's Sunday New York Times Read Along. Our guest this week is Amy Padnani. She's an editor on the Obits desk for the New York Times and author of Overlooked, an amazing project that we've reviewed online that started off as a New York Times project, but has now been turned into a book. So she'll be sharing the book with us. It actually was just released this week. This might be her first major interview for the book. Our host, of course, is Sri Srinivasan. You can follow Sri on Twitter at Sri, and you can follow Amy on Twitter at NYT My name is Neil Parekh. I am the executive producer and occasional guest host of the show. We're live on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, and our Digimentors website. Please like, please comment, share, retweet. And I say retweet, not repost. I refuse to refer to that platform as X. But we are looking forward to an incredible show today. As I said, Amy Padnani is our guest, and there are stories in this book that haven't been shared online that she's going to walk us through. We'll, of course, also review the paper with her in the latter half of the show. There's a lot of incredible news to show, and we'll also be showing an online feature later in the program. So please let us know where you're watching from and make sure to tag your friends to let them know that there's an interesting show. Remember, even if they can't watch it live, they can always watch it on replay at their convenience whenever they want to. So let's go ahead and welcome a few friends who are already joining us. Uh, Jonathan is offering greetings from New York. Jonathan, thank you for joining. Jonathan is a friend of the show, friend of Sri's and mine, and also a former guest. He is a flaneur, which I'll let him explain in the comments. But if you follow him on social media, you'll see his observations from around New York City. He also is a big fan of flamenco, which if I think he may have already connected. My sister is a flamenco fan as well. Mariam is watching on LinkedIn and sends us some love. Mariam, thank you very much for watching on LinkedIn. Uh, this is my weekly. Hi, Mom. How you doing? I actually had the chance to spend last week with my mom in Hastings on Hudson, New York. We're back. I should have said we're back on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, and our website. Last week, we did a special show on Instagram Live. And that was a lot of fun to help put together and to watch. I actually was able to join for the first few minutes from Wesleyan University when I was on campus, and then listen to the rest of the show while I was driving down to New York. So we're glad to be back. Doug Levy is watching from Southern California. I want to note Southern, not Northern California, where he usually is. Doug, we'll look forward to hearing more about that. And congratulations on the second edition of your book, The Golden Hour, that came out recently. And we look forward to having you on the show in the new year to talk about that. So let's go ahead and bring on our host, Sri Srinivasan, to the program. Sri, always great to see you.
Thank you, and great to see you, Neil. I know you got a sort of a week off when we moved to Instagram Live, which was a lot of fun. And you can see the recording of the show we did with Jason Del Rey, who wrote this amazing book called Winner Sells All, about the battle for between Amazon, Walmart, and others for our wallet. He also gave some great shopping tips, including some inside scoop from a former Amazon executive who said, don't buy anything on Amazon that you put on your body or in your body, meaning skin lotion or things you eat like vitamins, because there may be some problems with fake or expired or other issues. So that was kind of eye-opening. You
Interesting.
can find that on my Instagram at Srinet, so you can check that out. We're delighted to have all of you with us. We do this every Sunday, 8:30 a.m. Eastern. For 8 years, we've been reading the Sunday New York Times out loud because we believe not just in newspapers, but also the fight against disinformation, misinformation. We've also read the Chicago Sun-Times, the Washington Post, the Toronto Globe and Mail, the Khaleej Times out of Dubai. So we're always looking for opportunities to read the paper as well as guest ideas. And we have a fantastic guest who is not remote today. She is right here sitting in this room. You're going to meet her in just a moment. But I do want to see if I can show you a little bit of Manhattan right now, the city where we both live. Neil, of course, lives in Washington, but there is a taste of the Chrysler building. And then, Neil, you may not even know this other building next to it, the taller one, that's called Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
And it has a roof deck called, or an observatory called the Summit. And there's now so many of these things all over New York. And you can see construction, the city's always changing. And we're on the roof deck of our apartment building because we have construction going on in our home. Before we get to the paper, we want to thank our sponsors, Muckrack, for being great supporters of everything we do. And if you'd like to be a sponsor, let us know. Just email us. You see our email on screen. And also check out the work that our company does. Neil is VP of Events and Comms, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of Digimentors, and we do events like this. We've done memorial services, weddings, conferences, the largest gathering of teachers in human history, 100,000 teachers in 6 languages, and Neil produced that. Plus, we do all kinds of training around AI and social media, workshops, as well as PR marketing, all that stuff. So we'd love to talk to you if you're interested in working with us. Now, before we get to the paper, I want to tell everyone that we've been doing this for 8 years. And while we've gotten a lot of accolades and lots of love and support from people all over the world, we've gotten our first award. And even Neil didn't know we had gotten this award. This is called the Web3 Award, and Neil has one as well. It says 2023 Web3 Award Silver winner. It's so heavy, Neil.
Yeah. Right.
And it says at Sri's New York Times Read Along, Neil Parekh, executive producer, and credits our other producers, Paula Kiger and Carla Baranakis. Carla, longtime New York Times national copy chief and so much more. And Paula, wonderful copy editor and great supporter. And both of them are responsible, along with you, Neil, for us getting this award.
Thank you, Sri. I want to share the website for the Web3 W3 award. There's some incredible projects. There's this a teen talks about suicide and what parents should know from AARP. I know there was some Netflix specials that won awards as well.
Yeah.
So
Our
we're in
budget is
some.
slightly smaller than Netflix as well as the AARP. We did manage to get a bagel and coffee for Amy, so that was the extent of our budget. But thank you, Neil. Congratulations. You've done this every Sunday for the last 3-4 years, and none of this
6 years,
6
actually.
years. Wow, that's
You're going on 8 years, Sri.
yeah,
That's
and I must tell the story because we're talking about obituaries and families and all kinds of things today. That the one of the reasons Neil jumped in to do this for free before he was working with us is because his father, who was a publisher of a local Indian newspaper, loved the New York Times and asked to have the Sunday print edition of the New York Times in his casket when he was cremated. And I can't say that story without the hair on the back of my neck standing up. I knew him before I knew Neil. And Neil, thank you for all your support. And we get a lot of viewership from just the Parekh family, so we appreciate that as well.
Absolutely.
So let's get started. We have our guest,
Sure.
Padnani, is with us. We are so excited that she could join us. We have the newspaper full of lots of important conversation points, as well as her book. Amy Padnani is author of Overlooked, a celebration of remarkable, underappreciated people who broke the rules and changed the world. So please welcome Amy.
Hi, thanks for having me, and congratulations on the award. It's probably more impressive looking in person, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah, we're just so delighted that you could be with us, Amy. Thank you for your support of the show. This is your second time on the show. Last time you were remote, and you were talking about this series. Overlooked is, in the history of the New York Times, is written. One of the highlights and milestones is going to be this series. I'm going to just hold up the book here if I can for a minute. Here's the book version. Many people, obviously millions of people, have read the series, and this is the title: a celebration of the remarkable, underappreciated people who broke the rules and changed the world. The way I've been explaining it, Amy, is that this is a series that covered really the folks who would not have otherwise been covered during their after when they passed. A lot of them women and people of color, but I'm sure there's more nuance to it than that. So over to you.
Yeah, sure. It's interesting because some of the people in this book, we wrote about them during their lifetime, and yet we didn't note their deaths. And so that's one of the things I think people are most amazed by. Ida B. Wells, for instance, the pioneering investigative journalist who started a campaign against lynching. She's really well known, especially among journalists and women journalists, I think. We had a front page notice about her wedding announcement, but we had nothing about her death. And there were other surprises too. Sylvia Plath, who we would refer to as the wife of Ted Hughes. She was sort of overshadowed by her husband. Her death was not noted.
And in her passing in the year since, she's now bigger than Ted Hughes.
Yeah, we do tend to find that sometimes. Sometimes people's legacies become even bigger after they've died, and so that could occasionally be one reason why the New York Times did not think to cover their deaths in the moment. But there are also a lot of unsung heroes in this book. We have some quirky ones too. Annie Edson Taylor, who was the first woman to go over Niagara Falls in a barrel and survive. Others had tried before her, they did not survive. She did it on her 60th birthday because she wanted money, get rich quick scheme.
Did she get money?
Not much. No,
Oh.
She died pretty poor.
Oh.
In fact, at one point, her wagon was held up, and she told the robbers, "Blow away. I'd rather be without my brains than without my money." So, I really liked her. I just think she had an interesting personality. I wrote about Mickey Gorman, who won the New York City Marathon and the Boston Marathon in the same year, and then no American woman broke her record for 40 years. So until, I believe, 2017, when Shalane Flanagan won. And so lots of people you may not have heard of before, but still changed the world in some way and affected the way we live.
Amazing. And we have so many great people watching from around the world. We're very grateful to them. Ken Fisher is watching this morning from Iowa. Thank you, Ken. And Martin watching, says good morning. And Brett Deloach is watching from New Jersey. Great choice of guests today. And if you know any of these folks, you can also say hi, Amy. Sujana Chandrasekhar, Dr. Chandrasekhar is watching, and is happy Cricket Day because the World Cup cricket's going on, Amy. I don't know if you've been following it at all or care at all about cricket, but India is playing Australia in the finals. So for some people, this is as big as the Soccer World Cup. And we have a guest watching from Santiago in Chile on LinkedIn. Thank you very much. And Sudha says congrats for our awards. And Olga Mantilla Brown is watching from New York.
High school friend.
High school friend, yay! That's
still
the
good friend.
Yeah, good friend, and that's the power of Facebook, I presume, right? So welcome, Olga, and tell all your friends. Write to the high school class. Tell them about this. And Debbie's watching from DC. Bob Anthony's watching on YouTube. Bob, thank you very much. And Elizabeth Forbes Wallace is watching from Tacoma, Maryland, and we are just so happy to have all of you here. We're talking about what is a sad subject, the passing of folks, but those of you who watch the show know I love obituaries, and we had Amy on as a guest as the obituaries editor of the New York Times, and now she has this book that is built on the work that she created at the Times. I should point out to everybody that if they go looking for a book by Amy Padnani, they may not see that name on the book cover. So we should explain that the book is actually by Amisha Padnani. So tell us.
Yeah, that's my given name, Amisha Padnani. I mean, I guess it's part of my history and the development to this book, in fact, and this project, is that growing up, the daughter of Indian immigrants in Queens, New York, you're taught to sort of assimilate, blend in as much as you can, and just work hard and get through. And so at some point, maybe when I was about 10 or 12 years old, I took on the nickname Amy. And it just sort of stuck from then. I still have old friends who call me Amisha, but a lot of people who meet me today know me as Amy. And yet, before I started this project, it was 2017 when I first joined Obituaries, I had a little bit of an awakening in thinking about diversity and the importance of diverse perspectives in a newsroom, particularly, which have, a history of being dominated largely by white men. And so we see a lot more women in newsrooms, a lot more people of color, and our perspectives are really important. They're starting to shine.
I'm sorry, my dad called, folks, and so that's set up here into a little bit of a tizzy. But Dad, I will talk to you later. I'm sure he's watching the cricket as well. Folks, we're talking to Amy Padnani, and I will say, Amy, nothing wrong with shortening your name. I go by Sri Srinivasan. My full name is Srinath Srinivasan, and I encountered something funny on LinkedIn. You can verify your name now. And if you have government ID, and so I verified it as Srinath Srinivasan. I had a little verified badge, but then if I switch back to Sri, I lose the verification. Mm. So if you try that, maybe you might encounter that as well. But I know one of the things about this book is people's own identity and how people perceive them and how they're thought of in the world. Folks, we're reading the Sunday New York Times, as we do every Sunday at 8:30 to 10 a.m. Eastern. And if you're watching the recording, thank you for doing that. Please tag a friend. Tell us where you're watching from. Tag a friend. They can watch us live on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn, and on digimentors.group, or they can join us afterwards and watch the recording, as the thousands of people do. We're so grateful. So I do want to show folks the New York Times. So let's just very quickly show folks what's on the front page of the Times. Smoldering Gaza becomes a grave for children, a graveyard for children. Thousands killed in bombardment as Israel responds to Hamas attack. That's the lead story. And January 6th defendant pleads case to the son who turned him in. Years spent trying to repair the fracture in their trust. And as I read these stories, please jump in, Amy, if you know any of the writers or you want to make a comment about anything we see here. Also on the front page today is in about face OpenAI weighs CEO's return. That was a huge story over the weekend on Friday Night News Dump, where they fired the CEO of the hottest company in the world, and now he might be making a comeback. Colombia tries to rein in herd of overeaters. Is that right? Overeaters. Wow, that's is that? Presume that's not human beings. That's a hippo. Yeah, it's a hippo. Yeah. Okay, I in the U.S. it might be a story about people. So here it was a story about hippos. And let's see here. Universities give a shine to dusty downtowns. And let's see. College Board pushes its tests. Many will fail. So that's kind of interesting. There's so much going on in the paper today, folks. So that's the front page. We'll just quickly go through the other sections. The Sunday Styles cover is, I guess, about Thanksgiving, right? So let's see. What does it say? Ozempic versus Thanksgiving. The Ozempic diabetes drug, right? I believe that's now a weight loss drug that millions of people are using.
People still eat.
Yeah, exactly.
Eat a little bit.
Exactly. Let me just say hi to a few people. Lian Chung is watching from sunny Sarasota, Florida. Thank you for joining us. We are delighted to have you here. It is sunny here in New York also. And Radhika is watching from Mumbai. Hi, Radhika. And Paula Kiger is watching from Valdosta, Georgia, where I'm babysitting an angel, her grandchild. And here is the award. And Paula Kiger is the former producer of this show, along with Carla Baranakis. This is the award we got, folks, the W3 Awards silver winner in the podcast category. And Ying Chan is watching from Hong Kong. Ying is a fabulous journalist and friend. We're so grateful for her support. We've done so many shows together and very grateful to her for that. Here is the Sunday Business cover. Goodbye, feminist blogs. Hello, Gen Z content creators. This is about the death of Jezebel, which was a very important blog. And Amy, I don't know if you have any thoughts you want to share on Jezebel.
It's just interesting because recently, in fact, somebody noted to me, I was giving a talk with the News Women's Club, which a group of women journalists, and somebody remarked, you're really hearing less and less about Me Too these days and Black Lives Matter. And I think this headline really reflects that. It's true. You're hearing less about that and more about other trends. They just kick in. And so I think Gen Z has really stolen the show with TikTok and whatnot, and putting everybody else out of business.
Yeah, and just maybe you can read some of these titles if you know any of them. There's Jezebel 19th, which of course, yeah. I don't know some of these, but I'm sure they are important in the world of just content and storytelling. Folks, we're just going to look through the rest of the paper. Here is the Sunday Opinion, and people I've spent my life marching are not marching with me. And this is, of course, about what's happening with the war in the Middle East. The anger and heartbreak sparked by the war in Gaza threatened to splinter the Democratic Party. This is Michelle Goldberg's piece. And from the Supreme Court, a feeble ethics code dripping with condescension. This is about the great reporting done by journalists that revealed that the Supreme Court has serious ethics problems, mostly Clarence Thomas. 3 generations of one family wrestled with opioid addiction in an Indian reservation, and why voters aren't buying President Biden's boasts about the economy. One thought there. So the New York Times still uses the word Indian, right, instead of Native American. I don't know if you're familiar with any of the conversation around that.
No, not so much. I mean, we have a style book
Yeah.
that I follow when I edit stories every day. But
I maybe they've changed it, or maybe this is the actual name of the reservation. Might have the word Indian, but I don't know if they've changed it, because for a long time they would say Indian instead of Native American.
I think we say Native American.
Okay, so so we should look inside, and then let the feast begin. More Thanksgiving, and this is about Invitation to Banquet, Fuchsia Dunlop's book about China's vast and misunderstood cuisine. I want to give a plug to my friend Jennifer 8 Lee, who wrote a book about Chinese American cuisine many, many years ago, maybe more than a decade. And lots of other titles in here. And the New York Times Magazine is about David Zaslav, who blew up Hollywood. He's also the gentleman who owns CNN now, or controls CNN. The inside story of a novice movie mogul in an age of disruption, discontent, and disaster. And the real estate cover, what's next for realtors? A recent court ruling may change the way Americans buy and sell homes. And are you a fan of real estate articles? Do you?
I am. I also think living in New York, everybody is just sort of obsessed with real estate here, always thinking about how long am I going to stay here? Should I start thinking about moving? Let me look at some listings for fun.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think a lot of New Yorkers are just really jazzed to read about real estate.
And let's see what else we have here. We have the metropolitan section. The metropolitan section is grief, anger, and hope after a grisly death. And this is a climate activist suicide shocked his proteges, but they didn't give up the fight. This is about the death of David Buckle. Mr. Buckle, a lawyer and activist, set himself on fire in 2018 to protest the use of fossil fuel. I'm sorry to say I only vaguely remember this, and this should have been a much bigger story. But here, this is the metropolitan section. I understand this is only available to like print subscribers as a section, and only in the tri-state area, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And the arts and leisure cover is Diana's Shadow Lingers. I was just watching the final season of The Crown. Are you a Crown watcher?
I couldn't get into it. I watched a couple of episodes. I just am not as obsessed with the royal family as some of my friends are. But yeah. So, what did you think?
Yeah, I mean, I'm very interested in this because this is the era so many of us lived through, because it would, she died in 1997. We're up to the Diana's death season, and I would love to pull up the coverage of her time and the Times and everybody else when completely overboard. If you remember, one of the things that happened is that Mother Teresa died a few weeks later, or a few days later even, and there was a whole backlash about how come so much coverage of Princess Diana and relatively little of Mother Teresa's death. And the holiday gift guide. So this is a special section, and I'm never quite clear who runs these special sections. There's a special section, right?
Yes, there is, actually.
And some things start as a one-time special section and then spin off into regular things. So anything you can tell us?
I think the kids section we had for quite some time. That was a big hit. In fact, I remember my boss, the head of the obituaries desk, had to write an article for kids about obituaries, which sounds like quite a challenge, but he pulled it off. And yeah, I've read there's an international section about luxury watches that does extremely well. I don't know why, especially in a day of, Fitbits.
Yeah, and Apple Watches and things. Yeah, that's true. Leanne Chung says that I was in London for a friend's wedding when Princess Diana died. Wow, that must have been some experience seeing all of that put on. Where were you?
Probably in school.
Okay, yeah. So that reveals the gap, the huge age gap between us. We are talking to Amy Padnani about her book, Overlooked, and her work and her career. We're going to talk about it in just a moment. We've just been kind of glancing through the New York Times sections, and Amy is going to tell us now about the book and why we should all buy it. And first of all, it's beautiful, and it's an unusual size for a coffee table book. It's maybe it's not a coffee table book. I don't know.
Technically it is, but it's a little bit smaller, which is nice. Still a little heavy to carry on the subway. Unfortunately, it would have been great advertising.
Yeah, exactly. People should, but everybody should get a copy of this. And tell us about the cover. Tell us about the book itself.
Yeah,
we'll just hold it up here. And I know Neil has some fabulous photographs that we've put together. So you can glance at the screen there to know where we are.
Sure, yeah. So this book cover, actually, a lot of designers from the New York Times collaborated with Penguin Random House, the publishers, designers, to put this very elegant cover together. I think it reflects the mood of the project extremely well. It's got, I helped select the photographs. We really wanted striking photographs. So if you saw it on a book display, you would just want to know right away, who are these people? And someone even asked me yesterday, tell me about each of these people, and they were just fascinated. And so I'm very proud of the cover. I think it's just gorgeous. And yeah. Yeah,
so let's walk through, tell us about some of the people. So again, just the premise, just so everyone understands.
Sure. So this book has 66 obituaries, written by loads of writers. I've written 2 of them, and one of them was this one, Rattlesnake Kate. I wrote 2. I wrote Mickey Barman, which I mentioned earlier, and Rattlesnake Kate. So she was a very rugged, badass farmer in the plains of Colorado. So one day there was a duck hunt, and she and her son went out to find some wounded ducks to cook for dinner, when all of a sudden a rattlesnake comes out of nowhere. And so she takes her gun, of course she had one with her at all times, and she shoots the snake. And then another one comes, and she's worried about her 3-year-old son on the horse. And so she grabs a post that says no hunting of all things, and she clobbers 140 snakes to death. Everybody's amazed. They called her Rattlesnake Kate. She went back, collected the snake skins, and made a flapper-style dress and accessories. Also collected venom for scientists, and she became really well known for this. A cowboy poet wrote letters to her. He was we were so pretty in the paper, and they exchanged letters for 40 years, but there's no evidence that they ever met.
Oh, wow. So how did you pick 60 out of how many obits have been written in the obit?
Probably around 250. And so, in fact, about 24 or so in this book are brand new, never having been run in the newspaper before. So it was tricky. We just, the editor at Penguin Random House and I sat down and picked our favorites, the must-haves, the ones we really want everyone to know, that memorialize them in this book format. And then we looked at a balance too. We wanted to have mostly women, about 50% people of color. We also wanted to include people from the LGBTQ and disability communities. So I went out in search of some of those folks to include. It was tricky because 66 sounds like an odd number. But 352 pages, so we fit what we could. Plus, there's an introduction and some sidebars that talk about what it's like to work on the obituaries desk, and also offer tidbits of little nuggets that we weren't able to fit into a story, but were interesting for people to know.
And will some of those that are in the book but not in the paper now get into the paper?
Eventually, yeah. We have to wait a couple years, so they remain exclusive to readers who buy this.
Okay, so that's good.
First dibs.
Yeah. Well, while we're looking at the cover, do you want to just tell us who they are, and then some of them will be in the.
Some of them will be
But just tell us who's on the cover.
Yeah, sure. This is Raka Razmi. She was a Balinese dancer from a young age, toured in the U.S. and Europe as well. This is Madhubala, famous Bollywood actress. Alison Hargreaves, she was the first woman to climb Mount Everest solo and without bottled oxygen. Marsha P. Johnson, who was very instrumental in the Stonewall riots. Major Taylor, first Black world champion bicyclist, who, despite his talent, people would throw ice water at him on the tracks, and one opponent tried to choke him to death. And he died penniless in the end, despite how amazing he was. And then this is one of my new favorites. Terry Rogers was a transgender ventriloquist, extremely talented, and so very, very funny. I recommend looking Terry Rogers up on YouTube and watching some of the clips.
And of course, reading the book and finding her in the book. And what's on the back of the cover here?
So this is another thing I love about this cover. The front has all photographs of people, and the back is all artifacts. So we have like the tarot deck, because this is actually a friend of mine owns this tarot deck, and I borrowed it from her for the New York Times to photograph in his studio. It's well worn.
The Times doesn't have tarot cards just lying around.
Right. Well, on obits, it would be very helpful to know the future of you guys. So we wrote about Pamela Coleman Smith, who illustrated the tarot deck, hand painted every single one, got no credit for it. This is a pamphlet by Ida B. Wells, an album cover by Zeki Murin, and a film strip of George Braithwaite, ping pong player, press pass from Margaret Moth. And I don't recall what this one is, but it is a letter of some sort. And so we have artifacts in the back, which I think was a really nice touch.
And I love this quick list here. It says the first officially ordained woman rabbi, the engineer who helped save Apollo 13, a transgender ventriloquist, the teacher who desegregated New York's trolleys, and the blues man whose life was a riddle. So let's explain why this book and the series was needed in the first place. What were the reasons why the New York Times ignored some of these people? And we haven't even mentioned, in my mind, the most famous oversight, or one of the most famous oversights, not having Diane Arbus, world famous photographer, didn't get an obituary in the Times. Right. So can you talk a little bit about that, and a little bit of, I know it's self-examination and criticism of your own institution.
It's true, yeah. So I mentioned earlier, I joined Obits in 2017, had a bit of a personal diversity awakening, and noticed that we would get these emails from readers sometimes saying, hey, why don't you have more women and people of color in your obituaries? And I actually hadn't noticed, but I thought, yeah, why don't we? And so I asked my team, and they said, well, the people who are dying today are from an era when women and people of color weren't invited to the table to make a difference. And I just found that really unsatisfying. I set out on this mission to balance our report, and stumbled across some interesting people in history, and on a whim, checked Times Machine, which is our archive, and found that a lot of them did not receive obituaries.
What was the most surprising in that first quick search?
I was surprised by Sylvia Plath, personally. Right. Yeah, just because, I think I read about her in high school. I think a lot of other people did too, with the bell jar, just so well known. I think the bell jar may have been published after she died, but, I didn't know all of this at the time when I stumbled upon her, and so her missing obit. And so I was really surprised by her. But Diane Arbus, as you noted, a brilliant photographer, and Alan Turing was also another.
Oh my God! I forgot. Yes, I mean now he's Benedict Cumberbatch, and he's so well known. And the Turing test is so important in the world of AI. It's what tells you whether looking blind at content is it created by a computer or not, if it's by a machine or not. And a terrific movie in the I forget what the title of the movie was, but the Enigma something or
Codebreaker,
something like that. But yeah, but such an important person in history. But that was because he was gay that he was not covered.
I wonder if it's because he was British and the New York Times was more U.S. focused. Although we did have a lot of international news. I mean, you can only surmise why these people were left out. I can't say. I can't go back in time and ask the editors, what were you thinking? But sometimes I wish I could, because this one just really confounded me.
And I love the way you display these, right? It says overlooked no more, Alan Turing, condemned codebreaker and computer visionary. So, I mean, this is what he deserves. And that's part of, do you feel like it's like not justice, but like this is what they earned this?
Yeah, I do. A lot of these people went through struggle. I was really touched when I first read and started editing Alan Turing's piece by how he died. You know, it's believed that he purposefully ate a poisoned apple, and his mother refuses to believe that, but some people believe that is how he died. And so he was chemically castrated for his sexual orientation. He was not permitted to engage in government projects because of his sexual orientation. And think about how much more we could have learned from this brilliant man if he wasn't discriminated against.
Yeah, this absolutely horrible. Turing movie's called The Imitation Game. Thank you, Martin. This is our viewers fact check us and help us in real time, so that's great.
I'm lousy at trivia.
Linda Lawrence is watching, joining late. Good morning from Long Island, and Dr. Tachi is watching from Fort Lauderdale. She has a great Instagram show, folks. Please check her out. And a question for Amy, for Overlooked: how do you choose who should be featured and who should not? Is there criteria they should meet? And also, do readers reach out and suggest names of those who could potentially be interesting to be featured in this project? I can tell you, and she may not have seen this on her email yet, but someone sent me an AI-generated list of 40 suggestions of people who they think didn't get the Times treatment. So people always want to help.
Yeah, that's great. Of course, I say reader suggestions. A lot of the names in this book were reader suggestions. So I think about it as if this person were to die today, would they be worthy of an obituary? Would we write about them now? And other criteria, they have to have died after September 18th, 1851, which is when the New York Times began publishing. Otherwise, we could not possibly have overlooked them since they didn't exist.
And it's not meant to be every historical omission. So William Shakespeare doesn't have an obit, and all these other people, because it was before.
Before we existed.
Yeah, exactly.
So we really.
But have you ever thought of that? Have you ever thought, would it be fun to write kind of really historical, like Abraham Lincoln?
Well, it would be really hard, I think, to. I mean, the really famous people, sure, but there are so many people out there that are pitched to me and very little about, and there isn't much information out there. I mean, it's tough to do research on somebody who died
before the era of newspapers.
Yeah, or even 100 years ago when we did exist. So you have to get really creative with your research. But yeah, with the criteria, I think a lot about how did this person leave their mark in the world? How did they change the way of life for a group of people or society as a whole? And is there a story to tell here? Sometimes they just did something weird, like Rattlesnake Kate, and just she's in a section of the book that we call capturing the imagination, and that's because they just did these quirky, fun things that they got attention for, and we love those because we think that readers will just see a bit of themselves in the motivations of these people and the decisions they make to do some of the wild things that they do.
And you didn't lead with the most famous names then. By putting these folks first, you really went to the folks who were completely overlooked.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the first obit in this book is Annie Edson Taylor, who I mentioned earlier, went over Niagara Falls in a barrel, and it's just
there's the barrel, folks. Queen of the Mist, I think, is still the name of the ships that ply the waterfalls today. I think it's still called the Queen of the Mist, but there she is. Maybe she became the Queen of the Mist. I don't know.
Her barrel was ultimately stolen from her.
Oh no!
she had a rough life. She really had a hard time making a living, and because she was kind of a shyster who just wanted to get rich quick, I feel like, people can understand the struggle and the creativity by which she tried to make money. But I just love the way that story is written by Jessie McKinley. And I chose it as the first one just because I feel like it's so fun. It's a really interesting way to jump into this book.
And so this was covered in the Times, but not her death. So
That's right.
Yeah. And the woman goes over Niagara in a barrel. This used to be a thing people used to do.
People have done it even after her.
Yeah. But I don't know if I don't hear much about it. Thank God.
So I'm working on a children's book version of this, and she's going to appear in that. And
you're going to choose 30 or so, or
what was that?
Are you going to choose 30 or so?
It'll be about 10 to 12 profiles.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
And each one will have a sidebar. So I was working on the sidebar for Annie Anson Taylor and stumbled on a guy whose name I can't recall. He said, I can do whatever Annie can do, I can do better. He owned a restaurant near Niagara, and he would tell his customers and brag. And so he tried to go over Niagara Falls in a barrel of some sort. I think it was made of metal. He ended up breaking both of his legs. He was in the hospital for 6 months getting various surgeries. And the way he went on, he lived, but the way he ultimately died is he slipped on an orange peel and got gangrene during his surgery, which just is such a weird way for someone to go, somebody so adventurous.
Yeah. He sounded like the Bobby Riggs of his day. He thought that he could outshine this woman who was getting some attention.
Yeah, there you go, right?
Now, this is a dramatic and painful title here. Margaret Garner, runaway slave who killed her own daughter. Tell us about this.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, she lived this horrific life in slavery, and she just did not want her children to face the same fate. And so she decided that was what she was going to do to help her child not have to deal with it. And ultimately she was caught. She was charged with destroying property because that's how they were considered at the time. And her story was a subject of Toni Morrison's Beloved, it's such a powerful story, and that one is also, again, really well written.
And she continues to be measured not by infamy, but the shadows of her fortitude. And we're not going to go through each one because we want everyone to read, but these are so interesting. Houdini's Secret Ghostbuster, Rose Mackenberg, written by Gavin Edwards.
Yeah, I think there might be a really nice photo on the next page I think we included it, of all her disguises. There we go. So she tried to expose fake mediums, and she would wear all these different outfits when she would go and talk to different ones, and just. So
what is Houdini's connection? He
was the one who wanted to
expose them.
Yeah. So she was his right-hand woman, and she would make up all these fake stories, and obviously they would respond, and she would know it's not real.
One thing that strikes me is that it was the fashion of the day, but they're not that different. If you look at the clothes, I mean, they're each different individual, but like today, there'd be a wider range of things you could do as a woman.
Yeah, I don't think I would wear any of these outfits, but
exactly. We'll do one more before we hear some more broader thoughts about the book, and we have some questions also coming in. This is Sanmo, wandering writer who found her voice in the desert.
This one is such a beautiful story. She grew up just wanting to travel. She read this magazine article about the Sahara Desert and said, I'm going to go there one day. And her friends thought, how funny. And she ended up going. She lived there for quite some time. She really enjoyed it. She wrote about her experiences there and elsewhere. And she married this younger man who just would not leave her alone since I think he was 16 and she was a few years older when they met. And ultimately, he was adventurous too. He died in a diving accident, and her life was just not the same after that. And so it's just a really, really sweet love story amid everything else. She has a huge following now among Chinese women who want to travel alone, and saw a lot of strength in her doing it back in her day.
Dr. Chachi says this book is so important and a fitting tribute to the overlooked. And
thank you.
2 applause emojis. And what a story indeed, she says. And then the next section is called Paddling Their Own Canoes.
Yeah, it's kind of based on Audrey Sutherland, who she kayaked solo, long distances. She was also an older woman when she did it, and I like the way this story begins, where she had a desk job and she wanted to do something else with her life, and so she took this one look in the bathroom mirror and said, "It's now or never, old woman." And so she asked for a leave off of work. I think they wouldn't give it to her, so she quit and just embarked on this adventure by herself and wrote about it.
Amazing.
So she paddled her own canoe, and a lot of the other people here, they just sort of, created opportunities for themselves.
I love it. And this is Major Taylor, who you mentioned, world side champion bicyclist, 1878-1932. Randall Archibald wrote this. In 1898, that's a photo of him. He traveled the globe, becoming known as the Black Cyclone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. And it says pretty early on, like, he was amazing, he was this and he was that. So imagine this, he died penniless, in an unmarked, and was buried in an unmarked grave. It's just a really sad story. A colleague of mine read this story before bed. One of the beauties of this book is that you can just pull open one story, read it for 5 minutes, and then move on. And it doesn't require too much attention span, which none of us have these days. And so she read Major Taylor's story and was about to go to bed, but said it was too sad. So she had to read
one
another.
more. I'll just read this end here. Taylor's body was in a pauper's grave for years. In 1848, a group of former racing stars had him reburied with financial assistance from Frank Schwinn of the Schwinn Bicycle Company. I had a Schwinn bicycle in the cemetery's Garden of the Good Shepherd. There is now a memorial outside the library as well. The plaque on his grave reads, World's champion bicycle racer who came up the hard way without hatred in his heart, an honest, courageous, and God-fearing, clean-living, gentlemanly athlete. A credit to his race who always gave out of his best, gone but not forgotten. And it's written by Randall Archibald, who is the sports editor of the New York Times. He thinks of Major Taylor every time he rides, but still doesn't cycle like him.
Yeah, well, I can barely ride a bike, so I'm sure Randy can do better than I can. Isn't it funny how his bio is already outdated and this book just came out on Tuesday?
Yeah. And the reason, as everyone knows, is that the New York Times shut down the sports desk. They run stories from The Athletic now. Mm-hmm. And Neil and I hosted a read-along with an all-star cast of some of the biggest names in the New York Times sports writing history. And you can find that there it is. You see George Vesey, Laurie Mifflin, Claire Smith, and Bill Roden. And this was, we like to call it Murderers Row, which is a tribute to the 1927 Yankees. And we did that just as the New York Times was killing its sports desk. Very sad. One observation I'll make about the sports desk, and I need to ask somebody about this. The World Cup cricket is going on right now. The finals are happening at the moment. If somebody has an update, I'm sure we'll share it. Australia is chasing India's totals. The New York Times would write about cricket in its regular coverage until now. So I went in and checked The Athletic. It has no cricket coverage. So here it is, one of the world's biggest sports events. There is no cricket coverage now in the New York Times. And there is a video on how to understand cricket by the New York Times. One of the reporters put that together. So when we were told that The Athletic would replace everything and we would know the difference, it's not true. And I know this is
it's interesting because when a sports figure dies, The Athletic may write about them, and we're a little torn. Is that considered an obituary? Should we still do an obituary? We are not allowed to touch athletic content, but it's usually not written in the way that we would for an obit. And so, in a way, we're competing coverage with them because there are two pieces floating around about the same person.
Right, yeah. So I know there's a cricket update. Australia has a low run total to catch. 240 is relatively low. 300, 400 is a safer score for India. But they have already lost 3 wickets, as they say in cricket. I'm not going to try to explain any of that to anybody here who's not a cricket fan. But India still has hope. But at the beginning, it seemed like it would be very easy for Australia to win. At the moment, it's not. Neil, I also know that you've put together some beautiful pictures in high res that people can see. So why don't we switch to that instead of the book for a few minutes as Amy describes some of the stories in there. We heard a little bit about this transgender ventriloquist. So I just want to understand, the premise wasn't just that women and some people of color were discriminated against in the Times by not writing an obituary, but also LGBTQ folks.
Yeah, that's right. And in Terry's own life, she encountered a lot of discrimination for being transgender. She wasn't 100% accepted by her longtime partner's family, and so that was really tough for her internally to grapple with. But she was absolutely brilliant, and what I love is that she was authentically herself, no matter what other people thought. And these expert ventriloquists talk about her. They say there are like 3 things you look for in a ventriloquist. Well, she had this 4th one that you just don't see a lot, and so she was extremely talented.
And I'm just trying to think back. Every ventriloquist dummy within a lap of someone I've seen has always been a man. And
you don't see a lot of women, right?
Yeah.
And she had that vocal range,
Right.
which is pretty remarkable. So it was really, really believable when she did it.
Sure. Dan Foreman, who's saying hello, says, "Good for you for calling out the failure to cover cricket. What else won't be covered? Meanwhile, Amy and her book are extraordinary."
Thank you so much.
Yeah. And Ken says, it was a great show. He's talking about the show we did about the end of the New York Times Sports Desk. Lots of questions coming in, but let's look through some more images and then we'll go through some more questions.
This is Pamela Coleman Smith. I mentioned her earlier. She illustrated the tarot deck cards and got 0 credit. There are two men's names on the deck, but
so is there only one set of cards? I don't understand.
No, there are many. She did the original,
but the most famous one with the death and all those.
Yes,
those. So she illustrated them.
She illustrated all of the cards. She left room for multiple interpretations. As we know, tarot, it's I guess up to the interpreter in a lot of ways. I don't know much about reading them. She was also part of the these occult groups. She was also an artist, and some of her work is in the Whitney Museum. Just really, really beautiful stuff.
And one of the jokes Amy made was that if you could predict who would die, it'd be much easier at the obits desk because you could actually plan. But I will say one thing that we've noticed over the years is that the Times does do for the opposite of overlooked people who they do pre-obits and pre-interviews. Can you just touch upon that?
Yeah,
it's kind of opposite of everything we're talking about.
Sure. We call them advanced obituaries, and we have about 2,000 of them pre-written, waiting whenever the people are ready. And we have to update them. We can't write about them when they're too young because they keep living and doing things, and then we have to keep updating the obit. But we obviously have like important heads of state. We have all the surviving presidents. I was actually editing Narendra Modi's advance obit, so we usually look for people in their 80s. Typically, people who, or if they're younger, maybe they are very ill. So I know it sounds kind of morbid.
I mean, this whole enterprise sounds morbid in some ways, but I love the obituaries.
Yeah, but we always say that obits are more about life than death.
Okay.
So I guess when you're trying to predict death, then it might get a little bit morbid. But we have to be ready in this like fast-paced news cycle. We have to be ready to hit that button.
Have you made any calls to people saying, I want to interview you for advance obit? What's been the reaction? Mostly flattered, I presume.
Well, you get a real mix. I have, and I spoke with the person's agent and was told that she would be really freaked out if I contacted her. So I spoke with her sister instead.
So she doesn't know that there's you.
She doesn't know, so I'm not going to say her name.
Yeah.
And also, sometimes people, slam the door in your face, hang up, they're like really, creeped out. But other times, I remember hearing the great Marguerite Fox, who was a writer with us for many years, who retired. We sold some of her advances waiting to run. She was on the phone with somebody asking, it was the inventor of the poodle skirt, and she was asking all these detailed questions. First, she says, I'm just collecting biographical information. I work at the New York Times, did not say obituaries. And then said, well, what kind of scissors were you using to cut the fabric? And the questions are so detailed that the woman said, you're writing my obituary, aren't you? And she was so thrilled. And so some people, everybody's reaction is different, but yeah, I mean, a lot of people do recognize it's an honor. And for us, we want to get the stories as accurate as possible. So we appreciate it when a person is willing to talk to us.
Oh, wow. And sadly, some people who wrote advanced obits have died themselves before the subjects. And then so it runs months or years, decades later. Right?
That's true. Yeah, we'll have to add an editor's note saying that the reporter is no longer alive.
Wow.
It's funny when that happens.
Yeah. All right, folks, that's Amy Padnani, and she's going to tell us about what we're looking at in just a second. Ying has some questions. We have lots of questions here. And here's Linda says, obits are a celebration of life. So Linda agrees with me that we must read from the obit section. And Arlene says, greetings from the A train in Inwood. And
Pretty good service.
Yeah, I think they're above ground for part of that. So let's go on with some more of these slides, and then we'll get to the questions. And folks, that's Amy Padnani, obituaries editor of the New York Times. Please submit your questions, comments. There's a chance to get behind the paper, and we will look at the paper in a few minutes.
So this is Judith Love Cohen. She was a brilliant NASA engineer. Her abort guidance system saved lives on Apollo 13. She is also Jack Black's mother, and he is quoted in the obituary. A lot of people don't know that. It just sort of snuck in there. Jack Black actually tweeted about the book a few days ago, which I really appreciated. He's been working hard to get his mom's legacy out there. After her career, after she retired, or maybe while she was still working, she had a publishing company with her husband where they published books for children. You can be a woman engineer, you can be a woman this, and so really ahead of her time, pretty remarkable. I've been chatting with her husband a lot lately.
And what year did she die roughly? Like, was it?
Oh gosh, I don't know.
Okay.
Off the top of my head.
It looked like an old photo, so I was wondering if because I would think Jack's mother would be younger, but I was just trying to do some math there. Not a good idea. And there's Jack Black's post. It says, check out this great book. My mom is in it. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I really appreciate him helping us get the word out there.
Yeah, so everyone tweet about Amy's book, and her Twitter handle is NYT Amy. Of course, Twitter is in full scale meltdown at the moment, so that's a problem. But you're on the other platforms, I presume.
LinkedIn, Facebook. Yep.
All right, tell us about this.
This is Sinclair Clark. I wonder if you know his granddaughter, Diane Patrick. She's a journalist who lives in New York. So Diane told us about Sinclair. This is her grandfather, who was a taxidermist, and a lot of his work is in museums around the world, including the Museum of Natural History in Manhattan. He was really skilled at what he did, and did not get a lot of credit at the time, and it took many, many years for Diane to even know about his legacy. He was still alive when she found out. She went to go talk to him in the Bronx where he lived, but he was not very chatty at that time. I think he was 90 or so, but she slowly uncovered more and more about his life. Okay, let's go to another one. Sarah E. Ray. This was beautifully written by Audra Birch on her national desk. She was known for, I think it was Detroit. She was on what's called the Boblo boat. She had graduated a nursing program, and she and her classmates were going to celebrate at a theme park, Boblo theme park, whatever it was called. And so they're on this boat, and then a worker comes and tells her she has to leave because she's Black. And so she sued. It took many years, but she ultimately got these boats desegregated. And thank you to her. Yeah. And thanks for woman engineer. Shout out to Jack Black's mom. I too am a female engineer, Columbia grad. Thank you. Ying Chan from Hong Kong. Why did you pick a big book format? Even though I say it's not that big, but It is heavy, but I think it just looks so gorgeous. I think the idea was that this could sit on your coffee table. It could be a display, and you just would want to pick it up and read a story. I'm not entirely sure if there will be a paperback version next year. Hopefully, then people can read it on the subway. Yeah. But it was just calling out for it. Plus, there's so many gorgeous photographs, so it's a visually strong book, and I think that was one of the reasons why. Linda says, I don't understand cricket, but always enjoyed seeing cricket scores in the New York Times. So that's how much cricket coverage there was before these. Radhika asked from Mumbai, which of these individual stories was the most surprising or eye-opening for you? Could you please share an anecdote? Oh yeah, I think we did talk about a little bit about that earlier about Alan Turing and Sylvia Plath. One that I haven't done yet is the author of the Boxcar Children, which I read growing up. I don't know if you are familiar with that children's series. So I'm waiting for the writer to file that one. So maybe she's watching.
This is the ultimate pressure. The editors talking to you to Facebook Live.
She pitched that one. I thought it was brilliant, and I don't want to give it to somebody else because it was her idea. So I'm waiting for her to file. That was a surprising one to me because that series was just so popular.
Sure. Let's now go back to some more, if there are more slides that we have. And if we don't, we'll just go back. Oh, yeah, here.
I think this might be the last one. The Rani of Jhansi.
Yes.
Who I'm sure you're very familiar with as well. She trained her own army in India to fight back against the British. So remarkable for her day. I mean, there's no known photograph of her, I believe, and that's why we have this drawing instead. It was the 1800s. I mean, you just wouldn't expect a woman to take the lead in such a way.
Yeah, and this was the War of 1857, the first battle for independence in India. Long before Mahatma Gandhi and the nonviolent movement, there was an uprising called the Sepoy Uprising, and various princely states and others fought back. And one of the princely states was actually led, or princess state, I guess. This is the Rani of Jhansi, Lakshmi Bai. And there's a beautiful obit written by your colleague, and
Alicia,
she did a great job in that. And for folks who are Indian, this really stands out. That for a lot of us, also, it feels like such ancient history. But she just missed the New York. She would have been in the New York Times if she had been if they had not overlooked her.
I mean, India's independence is still relatively young.
So. And then just since we're talking about Indian women who have done so much in the world, let's point out you have Madhubala here, who is this amazing actress in the black and white era. And so tell us, how was there a time when they were covering Bollywood stars, or how did you she would get one today if she died?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, but I'm sure there were a lot of men also who didn't get.
For sure.
And women, of course. So how did you pick Madhubala?
Yeah, well, she was just such a huge star in her day. Her story was incredibly tragic. I mean, that is, a lot of these are stories of struggle, some more heartbreaking than others. But she fell sick at an early age, and her father still pushed her to continue acting. I mean, she has such a huge list of credits for movies she's been in. She couldn't even pursue her love life. She just worked herself to the bone and died young. But her movies, some of them are just classics. Are you a big Bollywood movie watcher?
Yeah, I mean, I am. And the caption here, or the subtitle, I guess, is "A Bollywood Legend Whose Tragic Life Mirrored Marilyn Monroe's." And there's that photo, a stunning photograph.
Yeah, so
there.
beautiful.
And Aisha Khan's obit here. She wrote the obit. Yeah. Well, so how do you assign the folks who? Is it based on pitches, or?
I think Aisha pitched this one herself. She's written once or twice more, and she, So a lot of times people will write in. They'll say, "I want to write about this person," or "I've studied this person," and it just makes total sense. In other instances, we look for somebody who would be good. So, for instance, the Terry Rogers one, Terry Rogers over here, the transgender ventriloquist, we enlisted Jean Thornton, a transgender writer, to write about her. And Jean did a beautiful job. I feel like Jean brought a perspective that somebody else could not. And so this book, in addition to celebrating diversity among its subjects, also has a diverse slate of writers. That was really intentional because there are a lot of young writers who I think don't get a chance or haven't had as many opportunities as others. And so I really try hard to give them that New York Times byline and offer their perspective here. Right, there's more. So Stella Young, and here's another instance. So Stella Young, I assigned to Wendy Liu, who joined the New York Times maybe a year and a half ago or so.
And just got married.
That's right, yeah. But she actually wrote this overlooked for me before she joined the New York Times. So you can tell this project has been this book has been in the works for some time. Stella Young coined the term inspiration porn. She said, people with disabilities are not your objects of inspiration. You know, for instance, you see a poster of a boy with a prosthetic leg running on a track, and the caption says, "If he can do it, you can do it." And it's like, no, he's just enjoying his run. It has nothing to do. He's not overcoming something. This is his body. This is his ability, and this is what he's just doing. He's living his life. And so she coined this term, and I saw Wendy give a little presentation about it for the Asian American Journalists Association convention. There was a panel discussion, and she had a slide about inspiration porn. And so I figured, Wendy, you're perfect. You already know about this. Wendy agrees, of course, with Stella's ideas. And so Wendy wrote the piece and explained it so extremely well.
I'm looking forward to reading it. Folks, that's Amy Padnani, and that's her book, Overlooked, Celebration of Remarkable, Underappreciated People Who Broke the Rules and Changed the World. And tell us when now, of course, this book is already, now you're in the promotion phase, but the book has been done. What else are you working on?
In addition to my day job,
which is
I'm an editor on the obituaries desk, so I'm editing obits every single day, working on these advanced obits that we discussed for people who have not yet died. I publish 2 overlooked obits a month in the newspaper still. So that and other things.
So it's not like, so I've always thought it was kind of random. So there's a plan.
I try to do it every other week.
That's cool.
They appear in print on Mondays. They publish online at various, whenever we can get to them. But there are 2 more books coming. There's a children's book for roughly age 4 to 8. I would say a 9-year-old would also grab. Maybe 4 might be tough. I think some of the subject area is a little bit tough for a 4-year-old to grasp. And then there is a young adult book coming that will be an adaptation of this book. So we're really hitting all those age ranges there. Although my best friend Jody sent me a picture of her 7-year-old son reading this book the other day. He was excited. He was flipping, looking for my name in the bylines.
I love that. Olga asks, in the process of writing your book, did you reach out to descendants of the people featured? I know you do that for other obits, but tell us about the book part.
Yeah, sure. We do. Diane Patrick, for instance, she knew that her grandfather would be featured in this book, but not in the newspaper for some time because it's exclusive to the book for a while. It's really, really helpful when a descendant is still alive and can provide all kinds of information, but it's hard sometimes when the person died so long ago. And it's also funny sometimes because descendants may not even know that they're something or other achieved the thing that they achieved. And so there was a woman, not in this book, but part of the original Overlooked launch in 2018, who had been credited with, she was the first woman to win in the Olympics. It was for golf. I believe it was in France. And the thing is, at the time, it was not actually categorized as part of the Olympics. It was only much, much later that it retroactively she became the first woman to win. And so when the writer contacted her great nephew, he said, "Oh, Aunt Margaret did that." So it's really surprising what you learn when you get a hold of them.
Sure, folks. Tell us where you're watching from. Tell us how your Sunday's going. Amy's having her New York City coffee. She got a bagel, cinnamon raisin bagel. I'm a everything bagel person myself. Well, this is a camera-ready person. She came camera-ready very early in the morning, so we appreciate that. Debbie Bernick says, love the boxcar books. My grandkids do too. And Amy was saying that there's one coming out on the author of the series who did not get an obituary. And I will likely delete my Twitter by the end of the day, says Jonathan Borstein. Enough is enough. That's such a useful tool, not just for everything else that it does, but Amy, I talked to folks who covered and worked in the emergency part of the earthquake in Morocco and the floods in Libya. And Twitter was a lifeline, literally, for the emergency response services in other crises, but now has failed because of Elon Musk and his ego. And Dr. Tachi says, enjoy, love a good New York bagel. Dr. Tachi's in Florida, so is thinking of our bagel. Yeah, one of the fun things I'll never forget, Amy, is that Neil and I and Carla Baranakis, who was helping produce the show, we went to Tom Jolly's house in New Jersey with bagels and coffee to read the Sunday New York Times. And that sounds like fun in any day, but Tom Jolly is the print editor of the New York Times. And as you know, and we had so much fun. And he's been a guest multiple times on the show, as you have, and we're super grateful to you. Let's give out some shout outs to people who are involved with the book, as well as your bosses who made Overlooked the series possible.
Oh my gosh, so many people. I think since its inception, involved in this project. Of course, my manager, Bill McDonald, has been my partner since the very beginning, a huge supporter of the project, still is. And yeah, so 66 obituaries, they're all written by different people. I wrote 2 of them. And we also had photo editors like Cecilia Bohan, Erica Ackerberg, Amanda Bowe, Sarah Eckinger. They all worked really hard on photo rights and permissions and all the research that they did. And it's just like so gorgeous, the stuff that they found.
You know, this is not like the Oscars. You will get a chance if you forgot somebody. You can shout them out a little later.
I mean, there's the art designers who worked on the cover and helped with the layout of the interior. There's, of course, my agent, the publisher. There's a zillion people who are involved. I'm not trying to thank everybody, just trying to give the scope of how many people were just involved in this project. It's just, there's no way it's a solo project. I can never do this alone.
Yeah, and this is a tough question. Were you worried that people would be upset that they were overlooked in the Overlooked book because you couldn't put all the overlooks in the overlooked 200 plus overlooks in the paper, but only 60 here, and then you're going to cut down further for the young adult and further for the kids book. How did you deal with that?
I know some of the writers were disappointed that the obits they wrote didn't appear. I mean, we could only choose so many. I mean, I hope not. I think essentially these people were overlooked by the newspaper, the institution, the New York Times, and as long as they're getting their due in the paper, I think that's the most important thing.
Exactly. Doug Levy is watching and says, Amy's stories are so interesting. I'm looking forward to getting the book. I think it'll likely be a gift item too. Yes, I think it's perfect for the holidays. And remember what she said, there's a celebration of life. It's not about death. It's about people and the lives they lived. Well, I believe it's one of the highest forms of journalism, and that's why we pay so much attention to obituaries in the New York Times read-along. But we also know that in lots of places, that's one of the first jobs you do is the obit desk. If the paper even has an obit desk these days, they start at the obit desk, and it's a good way to learn to write about people. One of the assignments we used to give a lot, Amy, at the Columbia Journalism School was first day, have students write each other's obits, advanced obits. And before we did advanced obits, we used to have them like give a cause of death and write an obit for another 20-year-old. It was kind of weird. And people would make up the worst kind of deaths for these people who are not even yet their friends because it's the first day of school. So instead we moved to this kind of advanced obit. Of your new classmate, write that, and then you really hear about like what people think is important to them, what they did, and it's different, right? And that's why there's something really powerful about obits.
Yeah, it's it may sound a little bit creepy, but I recommend that people perhaps write their own obituaries, or at least try to leave some record of yourself behind, whether they're letters you've written, journals you've kept, probably not just social media feeds, but you never know who's going to be looking for you perhaps 100 years later for something you did that maybe you didn't think was amazing, but ultimately did have an impact on the world.
One thing I will say before we move to the paper, and we'll only have very few minutes on that, is that one thing you can do for your survivors is, in addition to writing your own obituary, so that'd be nice, but is to please go into your Facebook and create what's called a legacy contact, somebody who will have access to your account when you pass so that it can be memorialized. And I have lived through multiple close friends and family who did not do this. And when they died, it just causes turmoil in their lives because of the way Facebook works. So please set up this legacy contact. just Google it. Just do it. Do it today, please. It'll help your family and friends at their worst moment when you pass. Rose says the Overlooked Initiative is so important. Congratulations on the book. And Rose runs Women to Follow, the hashtag and the show and everything else. So everybody should know about that. And Dr. Tachi is already putting pressure on you. She says, will there be an Overlooked 2?
Oh, I hope so. I think.
What have you done for me lately?
I'm hoping that book sales are so good that they want a volume 2. That way we can get some more of those people in there who felt they didn't make it.
All right. Well, we hope so, because then that'll give us another excuse to have Amy on the show. Let's quickly go through the paper. We haven't had a chance to really talk about the news. Obviously, so much news going on in the world around, including the war in Israel. Lots of coverage there. And we are seeing also there's aiming for the moon and Mars. It wasn't a complete success, but Elon Musk SpaceX made progress in its second launch, but it did blow up at the end. The Sunday Styles cover is about Thanksgiving versus Ozempic. Any thoughts about Thanksgiving you want to share?
I might have to work on Thanksgiving. I'm not sure yet. So.
Oh no, really? The obit desk has to work on Thanksgiving.
A lot of people tend to go around the holidays. I'd be surprised.
No.
So we do need to have somebody on duty just in case. But
oh no! And you volunteered or were
no,
voluntold?
I'm trying to escape it. but yeah.
So what do you sit around waiting that day? What if you're working, or you'll just do other work?
I'll do other work, and then if
but the idea is that if
dies,
somebody
I'm
dies,
there,
I'm there. Yeah.
Prepared. But usually the New York Times does do a potluck, or not a potluck, but like a catered Thanksgiving in the office for those who go in. I'll probably just stay home. But.
Okay. Yeah, and what is the situation at the Times? Is mandatory to come in some days a week?
They're asking for 3 days a week, and it's starting to pick up a bit. But it's still not quite at the levels where it used to be.
Yeah, this Arts and Leisure cover is about Diana's shadow lingers. We discovered you're not a Crown watcher, but these kinds of giant people, when they die, like Diana, some of us who are Times watchers try to predict, will this person get a front page obit versus not? Can you talk a little bit about that? Prince got a front page obit. Sinead O'Connor did.
Yeah.
How do you decide who gets a front page obit?
So our print hub, and that's probably because you've interviewed some of our print hub folks, but our print hub it's meant to be sort of separate from the individual sections now. So we're technically not supposed to have that much say in print. However, we do decide our obits lineup, and since they moved print deadlines pretty early recently, and so we decide the obituaries lineup 2 days in advance now, which is really hard. I mean, if there's then a breaking news obit, we have to see if they can tear up the page, but usually they can't, so we have to wait, which is unfortunate for our print readers because they have to wait to get that news. But
so could it happen that someone would have gotten a front page obit, they deserved it, but because it's now a day old, they end up inside?
I don't think so. I think if the person warrants front page, they'll be front page. And we get a lot of front page reefers, they're called, with the little photograph,
Okay. Reefers, yes. These things here, right at the bottom.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Yeah. So.
And then the other question, of course, with these is that what is the difference between an appreciation and an obituary?
But an obituary is more, the definitive biography of this person, has a lot of facts and biographical details, whereas an appreciation, which we see like among a lot of our music writers, for instance, is more descriptive of their style and why it was, perhaps so unique, or why this person stood out.
And that's written by the culture desk or typically, or the political desk, or whatever, right. Not by you.
Not by the obituaries.
Tell me about the Times Magazine and what you think of it. And not this one, not this episode, but not this issue, but just generally.
The stories usually take a good chunk of time to read through. But no, I love the magazine. I have a friend who's working on a piece that should be out, I think, early next year. I remember a really big blockbuster one not long ago was about hormone therapy for women in menopause, and I thought that one was fascinating. Just because it's, debunking these old studies that were not so comprehensive and were blown up by the media. And so women aren't getting the right treatments today for menopause. So I thought that one was a really fascinating one.
One fun thing that Neil and my colleague Jenny Lazarus and I got to do was go to the Times on a Wednesday and do a read along with Jake Silverstein as the paper comes out, the magazine comes out on like a Wednesday, and so we were able to be in his office and do a read along with the Times magazine. It was so much fun. Talk a little bit about the book review and how will they treat your book? You don't know?
Is my book in here?
You would know already if it was in there.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
I don't actually know if they will. I have no say. I mean, we did send a copy to Gilbert Cruz, who runs the book review.
Come on, Gilbert, do it.
So
And then you might advertise too, right, you folks? Because I've seen nice ads in the paper.
Yeah, we do have. We call them house ads running for the book. So.
But it will be reviewed by other publications, I'm sure.
I sure hope so.
Yeah,
I haven't seen any yet, but
it's early, and I guess it's a different kind of book, right? So that's part of. It's not like a traditional nonfiction book.
That's true. Especially as a compilation or anthology.
Exactly. And this is so many interesting books in here, including a book about Romney. And I'm just flipping through the paper here. It's so cool. That's the one of the obituaries editors of the New York Times, and I was flipping through the paper here. So much to talk about in the paper. The essays here. Some of these are also fascinating. The essays that they write in the print section of the paper as well. Do you consume the bestseller lists and things like that? Are you nerdy about that? Yeah, you want to be on it, of course you do.
Yeah, we do. Well, a lot of times we'll write about best-selling authors in obituaries, and so we have a contact where we confirm with them, was this person actually a bestseller? So occasionally I do.
Have you ever had the opposite problem, or in the history of the Times, where somebody didn't deserve an obituary and got one in the Times, either through a mix-up or presumption that they did something more important, or has that ever happened? Have you ever retracted an obituary?
We have assigned obituaries, and they were written, but the writer just didn't really find enough to make the person seem worthy, and then we killed the assignment. Meaning we didn't. Kill is a funny word to use for an obituary, but we ended up not running it. That has happened a few times.
Folks, we have just a few minutes left with Amy Padnani. Walter Greason says, congratulations on this priceless and sensitive work. Professor Greason is awesome and a former guest on the show. And you should be showing this as not just Walter, but all professors should be telling students about how big institutions can overlook important people. And here's an institution that did something about it. I think that's what's special. Leanne says, I kept the early version of the London paper after Princess Diana's crash. She was not yet declared dead. And hello from Philadelphia, says Apollo, who works with us at Digimentors. And thank you for Overlooked. It's powerful. How does it feel when you get these kinds of compliments?
I mean, it's really, nice and reaffirming to hear from readers that they enjoy these stories, that they feel, when Overlooked first launched, I wasn't actually expecting the reaction I got. I mean, I knew it was personally meaningful to me, and it had become this mission, but people said things like, I felt seen for the first time, and
something unusual to say it wasn't about them, right? They were just that women or people of color.
But that's what's so beautiful about obituaries is like they are about the human experience.
This Madhubala, I'm just looking at her.
Yeah.
This is the front of the
that's right, from the
series
launch.
on the website, and it's still available, and you can read all 200 online.
They're floating around out there. I mean, nytimes.com/overlooked is where you'll find the latest ones as well.
Oh, good. And this was news to me. There'll be twice a month, and new Overlooks will be coming. So that's great. And let's just look at quickly the Sunday opinion section. It's people I've spent my life marching with are not marching with me, about anger and heartbreak over the politics and everything that's done. In this one here, and this too. And this was, we talked about this a little bit. Goodbye, feminist blogs. Hello, Gen Z content creators. And this is about the death of Jezebel, a website that I like reading and thought it was so good. But media has changed, right? That's part of, and I don't know if Double X Factor is still there on Slate. That was an early site that I read. We just have a couple of more minutes, but I thought we'd have some fun with Amy. We're going to go to the style section, and the social cues.
Oh, I love that
And
section.
you love that section. Okay, so what we're going to do is well, first let me find it, and we're going to read one of the the etiquette questions and see how she would deal with there's no right or wrong question
Yeah.
answer, as you know. Philip Galland's is terrific, and Neil, we've got to get him on the show, so we got to try that. So there are a lot of questions, I presume, about the holidays this time of year. So it says here, uneasy holidays. Let me just look for a short one. Okay. Extra stuffing, hold the dander. Thanksgiving is near. I am hosting, and my younger brother just informed me that he will not come to our family dinner unless he can bring his dog, to which my 7-year-old daughter is deathly allergic. What do I do? Now I can tell, I'm sorry that this is, see, it's focusing on you. The camera's focusing on you instead of this, so I'm going to turn that off. Neil's probably getting mad in the back for my doing that. But okay, I should make it clear where my sympathies lie, because I am a dog owner, and Tara Beagle NYC, that's her Twitter or Instagram handle. But I want to hear you first, and this is like one of these letters where you're going like, oh my god.
Yeah, I love dogs as well. I don't know how far this person is traveling for this get together. I mean, it's hard. You don't want to leave a dog alone for such a lengthy amount of time, but I wonder if there's some kind of a conversation needs to be had. Clearly, you know.
But the daughter's deathly allergic.
Yeah,
of the host.
The conversation needs to be had about what can be done with the dog. You know?
Exactly.
And so I mean, it's probably too cold. You don't want to leave the dog outside, but perhaps there's a dog sitter.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe a shorter visit.
Yeah.
But
all of those things.
You can't have the kid dying. That's
yeah,
sure.
Exactly. All right. The obituaries editor of the New York Times has spoken. You safeguard your child's health and well-being, which is your primary responsibility as a parent. I'm sorry your brother put you in this position, assuming he knows about the allergies, and I presume he does. You could explore dog sitters and kennels with him, or simply say, I'm sorry you won't be able to join us, but as you know, your niece is severely allergic to dogs, right? I mean, some of these letters, I just can't believe people write these.
I know.
These are human beings, and
it's hard to break difficult news to someone.
Yeah, exactly. Has it ever happened, as you do the real life obits, where you have in fact accidentally broken the news or to somebody, or reached out to someone?
I like to tell this story, which is also in one of the sidebars here, about Alan Abel, professional hoaxer. He came up with this fake nonprofit saying that animals need to wear underwear. He said a nude horse is a rude horse, and so people actually
have you seen some horses? They are.
So people actually bought into this for real and started chapters around the country. They had patterns in how to sew underwear for different animals. So anyway, so this guy was this was his profession, and so one day he faked his death. He had his sobbing wife call the New York Times. He had a funeral home information set up. Everybody was in on it, all these fake landlines. And so the reporter did their due diligence, got confirmation. And then the next day he has a press conference. Haha, I'm alive. You were wrong, New York Times. And so we're really, really careful to get what we call confirmation about every single person who dies. It's usually the second paragraph in the story saying who confirmed the death.
Right.
Anyway, Alan Abel actually died a couple of years ago, and we were having fun on the obit. Says, is he actually dead? Can we see the body?
Did you rewrite the same? Did you just rerun mostly the same bio?
No, it was different because back when he had faked his death, I think it was like 80s or 90s, early 90s.
Yeah. And he had done probably a lot more things since then.
He had done more things. And then this one included, of course, the tale of how he tried to prank us. And so we had fun with the headline. It said, Alan Abel, professional hoaxer, is dead, parentheses, or is he?
Or is he? That's cool. And so having a sense of humor, I think, is great. So what we're going to do is just take a quick housekeeping break, as we do at this moment. We're going to come back, and Amy's going to tell us why you should buy this book and give us one more push for this important work, as you've heard multiple people say. So we're going to give Amy a chance to just catch her breath and take her off camera. And thank you all so much for watching with us. We are so grateful. Linda Lawrence says, must sign off now. Wonderful show. Thank you and happy Thanksgiving. Neil, what a great show. This is all we wanted to do, was tell a great story, and guess we have done that again. And
absolutely. It's we've had Amy on the show before, and so he's pulling up our award that we won. We announced it in the beginning of the show. This W3 award, silver
for best podcast,
which is incredible. we've had Amy on the show before. We love showing obits. Almost every time we do it, we put up the obits interactive page with that background video that is just so striking. And just to see the book and to see the stories, I think is incredible. Sri, before we go into announcements, I do actually want to pull up one story that's going to be in the sports section
Yes, please.
on Monday. This is our friend Wayne Camadoy on the design desk gave us a heads up about this, and this actually fits in terms of the theme for today, unfortunately. And I want to just give people a moment before I bring it on screen because it's very, very striking. They started playing football as young as 6. They died in their teens and 20s with CTE. I'll put the link in the comments, but if you go through, and I won't turn on the volume, but just if you go through, there's personal videos. This is a young, a senior in high school.
I read this. I want to tell everybody that this is, it's very moving, very scary, very sad. This young man makes a video to his dad.
Yeah.
And then seconds later steps out of the car and deliberately shoots himself in the chest and not the head, because that's where the brain trauma can be found. The only way to detect CTE, very sadly, is after someone has died. You have to open the brain. And so he, and as we know, Junior Seau and other sports stars have shot themselves in the chest because they worried they had CTE, and they want the world to know, and the world wouldn't believe them in some cases. And this was a young man, 152 brains of contact sport athletes who died before turning 30. They examined them and they found many of them had, look at the number that had
40%
had CTE. Just absolutely horrifying. So,
and just look at these pictures coming up. I can't wait to see what they do in print, but it's just so moving the way they set this up, the way they presented it. It just goes, I'm scrolling down the page, and when you go to the page, you'll see more video, pictures of the families holding portraits of their kids. Just so
very scary.
So moving.
Thank you, Neil, for showing that to us. I appreciate it. And it'll be I presume in print.
It's in print tomorrow.
It's in print
in the Monday edition.
Yeah.
We also want to make sure folks know about our next show. So we won't be having a show on the Sunday of Thanksgiving weekend, but the first Sunday in December, Adam Nagorny is going to be our guest. I am just over the moon about this. He's the author of The Times, How the Newspaper of Record Survived Scandal, Scorn, and the Transformation of Journalism. The important thing to know, though, this show is going to be at a special time, 11:30 a.m. Eastern time.
Because he lives in LA, and he
lives in LA.
30 for the show. So
I mean, 5:30 in the morning would be really rough. So we're doing our show a little bit later, 11:30 a.m. Eastern time, 8:30 a.m. Pacific. Please mark your calendars and make sure to join us. I think it's going to be Adam.
Times reporter too. That's
I was going to say Adam would be an incredible guest on his own, just talking about his work, but to also talk about the book is just incredible.
Yeah. I guess it's kind of an authorized book because he still works at the Times, right? So I don't know how much tea he's spilling in that book, but it will be interesting to see that. Dan Foreman says, "Who knew there could be humor in obits?" And Amy made us smile many, many times. Before we go to the rest, a couple of quick announcements. You saw that's coming up next week. We're 2 weeks from now, 2 Sundays from now, not this coming Sunday, Thanksgiving Sunday, but December 3rd. Everyone, please join us for that show. And also a big thank you to Neil and everyone at Digimentors. And if you would like us to do a show like this for you, an award-winning show like this for you, or do training around AI workshops or any of the other things we do, please let us know. You can email us, sri@digimentors.group. And if you'd like to sponsor us, we'd like to thank our sponsor, the folks at Muckrack. Please check out muckrack.com. We're so grateful to them. And we do this every Sunday. We've been reading the New York Times out loud like crazy people for 8 years, but we also do other newspapers and as well. So we're looking for guests for 2024. We're booked out through the end of the year. If you'd like to be a guest, please let us know. Amy has been kind enough to come back twice. Tom Dolly 3 times. Our friend Monica Drake also came 3 times on the show. She's also at the Times, but you don't have to have anything to do with the Times to be a guest on the show. If you're new, you might be wondering, do we only have Times people? And the answer is no. We've had all kinds of great folks So let us know if you'd like to be a guest.
The other thing to remind folks is that if you joined us late, you can watch the show from the very beginning on the same links that you're watching now on Facebook, on Twitter, on LinkedIn, on YouTube, and on our Digimentors website. As soon as we finish, the show it takes a few minutes, and then the show is available right on that same page to watch.
And tag a friend, let them know, and they can catch up later on in the week as well.
Absolutely.
And now let's bring Amy back. Amy Padnani, there she's sitting with me now. That's I want to show that this is not a TV here.
It's not AI.
It's not AI. And we're so grateful to her coming out early morning, joining me here in New York City to talk about her one beautiful book. So Amy, you're on. This is your pitch about the book.
Yeah, somebody called it priceless, but it's actually $35. Kidding, but it is. And you can get them wherever books are sold. I really think it's, I mean, I'm biased, but I think it's just a lovely project overall. I'm really proud of how it came out. As I mentioned earlier, you can just flip through and read one story, or you can read 10. You know, you don't need a huge attention span all in one sitting, but it also makes an amazing gift. And I think a lot of people can see themselves in these lives, which is one of the reasons it's so meaningful. So I recommend picking up a copy.
And for those who missed it, very quickly, who is on the cover? So the mini bios, yeah.
Rocco Rosny, who was a Balinese dancer, Madhubala, famous Bollywood actress, Alison Hargreaves, mountain climber who broke records, Marsha P. Johnson, who was involved in the Stonewall riots, Major Taylor, world champion bicyclist, and Terry Rogers, transgender ventriloquist. And
so the Times missed not just these bios, but more than 200 that Amy has helped launch through her and more at the New York Times. Overlooked is the name of the series. And now there's a book. There's a kid's book coming for 4 to 9-year-olds, and then a young adult book. So Amy's going to be busy with all of those. And we congratulate you, Amy, on taking an idea, fixing a problem in this most dramatic way, not just, influencing the New York Times, but then getting it into a book and all these other series. We're very, very glad that you've been able to do this.
Thank you so much.
And Jonathan says, great show, should not be overlooked. Marilyn says, this read-along starts my week with inspiring guests and meaningful discussions. Thank you. Liz Presman says, yay. And Doug Levy, who lives in California, is watching at 5:30 a.m. every week. He says, what's wrong with 5:30 a.m. to get up for this show?
I'm more of the 11:30 city, actually.
That's huge that you did this. We appreciate it.
We didn't give her that option.
Exactly. Coffee table book for my non-existent coffee table. Have a great week ahead. And there's a whole Seinfeld about Kramer creating coffee table book about coffee tables.
That's right.
And it came with its own legs. And he revealed it on the Regis and
Kathy Lee.
Kathy Lee show. That's right. That's the show she came on. And the book has great photos, says Arlene Schulman. So that's great. And the ultimate compliment is not this award alone, but Sudha Parekh, Neil's mom, says great show. So we appreciate that.
And I think she has a special fondness for you. I don't know if I mentioned it to you, but my sister's name is Amy as well. So it's all in the family.
Yeah. And Rose says, wonderful show. Thank you. And Amy, thank you very much. Tell us what your typical Sunday is if you weren't getting up so early.
Maybe going for a run around noon, and then I play pool. So I like billiards. So
nice.
I have a pool match later today.
Wow, that's exciting. And so how did you get into pool?
It was just one of those things, you do for fun in high school, except it was one where I thought, I think that if I did this more, I could actually be decent at it.
Wow.
She had to pay her way through college somehow.
Yeah, exactly. Pool shark, yeah.
Yeah. Unlike like picking up the trombone, I'd probably be terrible at that. But I had just this inkling about pool, and so I decided to get more into it as an adult.
Right. Dr. Tachi has watched the whole thing. Thank you so much. Great show, she says. And with that, we're going to say goodbye to Amy. And to all of you, thank you for watching. Share with a friend. We'll see you in 2 weeks with Adam Nagorny. And you'll find our archives on my Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and LinkedIn. But most importantly, you can find it on digimentors.group. Look for the New York Times Read Along, and you'll find our collection there of some great, great guests and colleagues of Amy's and people who Amy doesn't know at all. All right, folks. Thanks very much. Bye.
Thank